It's not in your book, but it's in the interview with the Village Voice. Why didn't you put this story in your book, by the way?
Because one of the things that I'm trying to do with the book, I'm not trying to attack the philosophy of Scientology. I think that people can believe whatever they want to believe in. That's their own business. But the thing that I wanted to highlight in the book were the activities of the organization and the things that happen that are either against the law or that just aren't right or, those types of things. And I didn't want to make it a book about, I didn't want to make it a celebrity tell-all, but at the same time, I was there, and Tom Cruise did have to do some Scientology training.
What is auditing?
Auditing is basically the counseling. It's the word for counseling that Scientology
So
uses.
he's being trained as a counselor, and he has to go up, I guess, a series of steps.
That's exactly correct. In order to...
And you were what for him?
I was what they call a pre-clear, someone who's not yet cleared in Scientology. So when you're progressing up the processing or the counseling side of Scientology, you also have to learn how to deliver these same processes that you're going to get done on yourself. So Tom Cruise had to learn how to deliver those processes to somebody else. And you go back and forth. You train on how to do it, and then you do it on somebody else, and you also have it done on you as well.
Now, so he was getting you to move or try to move books and bottles. What's that story?
Yeah, part of the indoctrination in Scientology, one of the things that you do, some of the training routines and some of the processes that you do have to do with basically controlling things and being able to be controlled. And you take a person and you move them from one wall on one side of the room, and you actually tell them to go to the other side of the room and touch a wall and then turn around and go back, and you do this over and over again. And then they even get to a point where the person that you're doing this with is told to resist, and you still have to actually force them across the room. You have to force them.
And what does this teach you?
This teaches you how to control other people. And then also...
Well, it teaches you that if you grab somebody, you might be able to push them across the room. I don't really get it.
Exactly.
Now, but with the Tom Cruise thing, it was a book in a bottle, and he had you place a book on a chair.
And the book in the bottle one, there's several different processes, but one of them is where you walk over to a table, and the person tells you, go over to the table, pick up the bottle, what is its color, what is its weight, put it back down. Then you do the same thing. You walk over to a book. Then there's another one that happens with an ashtray. You sit in front of a chair. You're seated in a chair, and right across from you is another chair, and there's an ashtray in it, and you actually command the ashtray to stand up, and you lift it with your hands, and you lift it up, and then you say thank you, and then you say sit down in that chair. And
wait, and so Tom Cruise he commanded you to lift the ashtray.
Well, and that one, that's
and then say thank you to the ashtray.
On that one, that's a training routine, so that's not a counseling thing. So I didn't do that one with him, but I did do the one where you walk over to the table and pick up the bottle. But regardless, he had to do those things in order to be able to deliver this counseling.
You did this for weeks with him.
That's correct. We did several different processes. Those were just a few of them, but we did,
How long did you move the book and bottle around on his command?
I think that went on for a few days. You do each of these things.
And you don't go nuts and start screaming, and he doesn't go nuts and start screaming?
Well, see, it's one of those things. You're taught that.
Well, hang on just a second.
Yeah, we got to take a break. We'll have a much longer segment when we come back with Marc Headley. The book is Blown for Good Behind the Iron Curtain of Scientology.
This is the John and Ken Show. John and Ken Show, John Cobelt and Ken Shampoo. We continue with Marc Headley. He's written Blown for Good Behind the Iron Curtain of Scientology. And it's about his 15 years working at what is known as Gold Base, which is the headquarters for Scientology near Hemet in the high desert in Southern California.
He escaped in 2005. In the last segment, he was telling us about an encounter with actor Tom Cruise. But he said he wrote the book because he just wanted to really expose other aspects of the Church of Scientology. And let's talk about your escape for a few minutes, because eventually they claim that you were embezzling from them.
Yeah, basically what had happened is I was selling old 16-millimeter film equipment that they had bought in the 1980s, and it had been stored in a warehouse in L.A. And basically I did a submission and did a whole proposal that we could sell this, and then we could use that to buy more current, LCD TVs and other audiovisual products that I was building for them over their audiovisual systems area. And in the end, basically what had happened is I'd sold a ton of this stuff, and they said that I had embezzled, it was like $150 or $200 of the money that had come in for that was mixed with my personal account. So I was just like, okay, fine, here's $200. We'll call it square and we're done. And it was like, no. It was basically, no, this is a principal thing. You're going to go to the Rehabilitation Project Force, which is this labor camp that I was telling you about. And at that point, I had already been, for 15 years, I'd already had enough. I mean, I had worked. You
said you had enough after a few months, though.
Did
you spend your whole 15 years thinking this was all insane? Or did you accept it?
No, I mean, well, that's the thing. You know that some of the things going on are crazy, but at the same time, you don't. I mean, for me personally, I mean, every person's different, but for me, where was I going to go? If I left, there was the threat of if I leave, I'm going to be recaptured anyway. So that's like, okay, which happened hundreds of times when I was there. People would leave, and then, 2 months later, you'd see them back there again, and then they're the dishwasher for the next 3 years. And
when they were recaptured outside the base?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I go into that in detail in the book. There's actually a whole section where it says exactly what happens, what actions go into motion when someone is discovered that they're missing. There's 3 to 4 roll calls a day. So as soon as someone's missing at a head count, they put this drill into motion where people are sent to bus stations and airports and local hotels and police stations and hospitals, and they basically try and track this person down within hours.
You literally had to escape. I mean, you had help from a Riverside sheriff's deputy. How did that explain your escape?
What had actually happened is that I decided after this whole embezzling fiasco, I basically said, okay, fine, I'm definitely not going to the Rehabilitation Project Force. I'm out of here. So I drove off. I had a small motorcycle, which was like a dual sport. I could drive it on the road, but I could also drive it it's like an off-road bike, but it had a license. And I started to drive into the town, Hemet, from Gilman Hot Springs. And within 10 seconds of me pulling off from the Gold Base, I was being followed by the security personnel from Golden Era Productions, from the international headquarters.
Golden Era Productions is what they call their company there?
Yeah, that's the production facility that's located there. And so I was being followed by these guys, and they're yelling out the window, pull over, you got to come back, you got to come back. And I was basically just ignoring them, driving along, and they ran me off the road. They literally drove me off the road in an SUV, and I was on this motorcycle. And when that occurred, someone driving by called 911. And so there was an altercation on the side of the highway. They took the keys out of my motorcycle once it was crashed on the road. I had to pick up I had a duffel bag with clothes on it and stuff. It was in the road. I had to pick all that up, get it all back on. Then I had to fight to get the key back. I got the key back, got back on the motorcycle, and the carburetor was messed up from the crash, and I could only go about 5 miles an hour. Anyway, I'm driving down the road, and all of a sudden, they just turn around. They have a police scanner. They know the cops.
You're talking about the sheriffs.
I'm talking about the SUV. They have police scanners. Them, yeah. So they're chasing me. They continued to chase me once I got back on the motorcycle and kept going. But as we're driving around, they just turned around and drove back the other way.
Because they knew the cops were coming.
Because I didn't know why, but they knew why. And sure enough, 10 seconds later, 2 sheriff's deputies, one of them pulls me over. The other one goes after the SUV. They pull me over. They ask what happened. I'm still trying to play it cool because I'm fearful of what actions they're going to take to get me back. And I don't know what the cops are going to say. I don't know if they're going to bring me back.
Believe you or what?
Yeah. Let's sort it out. Anyway, what ends up happening is 2 Riverside Sheriff deputies escort me into Hemet, one in front of me, one behind me. And during that, 2 more vehicles from the international headquarters tried to apprehend me while I was being escorted. And it's detailed in the police report, which you both have. But it's basically they tried to, even when I was with the police, they still tried to figure out where I was going, who I had talked to. They even questioned the police on what I had told them and what the story was.
Are the police familiar with this routine?
I think the police were, because as soon as the police realized that I was from Golden Era, the sheriff's deputy basically just told me, where are you trying to get to? And I said, I'm trying to get into Hemet. He goes, good, we'll get you there. And they literally escorted me. The bike was damaged, so I could only go 5 miles an hour. So I'm being escorted, a few miles into this town with police cars in front and behind him going 5 miles an hour.
What do they do when they recapture people? Do they kidnap them?
It depends. I mean, I know one girl.
Could you be kidnapped walking out of the front of the station here?
I know one girl who climbed over the gate and started walking down the highway, and they sent somebody off after her, and they were walking with her along the highway, saying, "Hey, you got to come back. Hey, you got to come back." A van just pulled up, and they just grabbed her, and threw her in the van, and drove her back.
This was January 4th, 2005, and on January 28th of that year, they issued a suppressive person declare against you.
That's